Michigan got a couple players on Sunday from the transfer portal, and we're actually not going to get deep into them in terms of spending a whole segment on what Anthony Simpson and Caleb Anderson bring to the table. But instead, I want to talk about how they fit in to the current team, along with the rest of the major players. Stock up, stock down, essentially just where the stock is in terms of likely ability to crack the depth chart, see playing time next year. Pretty much mapped out the whole team. Let's get to it right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I was going to do a segment on the two transfers. I don't feel like we're going to have time based off of what I just mapped out, which is pretty much the entire team as we know it at this point. Looking at pretty much everyone that I know is on scholarship, hoping I didn't miss anybody. I don't think I did. We're not doing special teams. That's a little harder to kind of navigate. But what we can do is we can go through everybody that is essentially either a transfer, a current player, an incoming recruit, whether they're an early enrollee or whatever, and discuss kind of where they rank in the pecking order in terms of likelihood to play in 2025. So let's start off with quarterback. Let's do offense. We'll do, I think, 3 per. I think that's probably fine. 3 per segment, 3 position groups. Maybe we'll do 4 in segment 1, depending. Quarterback. There's 2 in the high category. That should be no surprise. It's Bryce Underwood and Mikey Keene. So I did this as like high, medium, and low. Some of them have medium high or medium low, but for the most part, we're in high, medium, or low. We'll explain everything about every player here. So Bryce Underwood goes without saying, number 1 recruit in the country, 5-star, already has all the physical tools, already at least where JJ McCarthy was. And in terms of that, has to learn a bit. Mikey Keene, multi-year starter at Fresno State, a guy who's been around the block. He brings a lot of knowledge and ability. At medium, I have Davis Warren, by virtue of him having been the starter at Michigan, by him having beaten Ohio State and Alabama, but at the same time, the ceiling is very low. He can get better year over year. Certainly, he could end up challenging to be that guy who starts in week 1, but certainly it's a lower ceiling with him. In the low categories, I have Jaden Davis and Chase Herbstreit. Jaden Davis, I know it's year 1. Typically don't expect freshmen to crack the lineup. It's going to take a lot this offseason to get him up into medium. It's certainly possible, but at this point, I have him at low. Chase Herbstreit's not going to see the field in year 1, barring absolute disaster. Offensive line, I've got 2 on the high mark, 2 in medium high, multiple mediums, and even more lows. That's kind of what you expect from the offensive line. So the 2 in high, I have Andrew Sprague and Greg Crippen. Sprague was excellent against Alabama in his first showing in his redshirt freshman year. Greg Crippen, I thought improved over the course of the year. That's hence he ended up resting that starting job away from Dom Judice. And I think he finally kind of at least looked like how you'd hoped. You hope that he takes another big step forward. Medium high, I have Evan Link and Giovanni Alhadi, neither of which had particularly good years, but they're medium high because you know you're going to see them, basically. I'd love to see Link move inside. I don't know how you make that happen. Especially with some of the others that are around there. So the mediums, I have a transfer, I have a sophomore, redshirt freshman, a redshirt sophomore, and a true freshman. So I have Lawrence Hattar for the Ferris State transfer, Nathan Afobe, who certainly in his 3rd year could end up being that tackle. You just hope you can see it, and hopefully that works out. Jake Guarnero, the center, who I think you could see just by virtue of this is his 2nd year. You don't usually see that necessarily, but Michigan's tended to kind of mess around with the center position. And then Andrew Babalola, we could add Ty Lockwood to this list if he commits. But I think that generally you don't see freshmen playing along the offensive line, but it's a little different when you have a 5-star who early enrolled. But Ty Haywood Not an early enrollee, but nonetheless, Babalola being on campus helps. Low, I have multiple. Blake Frazier, just by virtue of him being injured for most of the year and in street clothes, that doesn't help him. Luke Hamilton, I think he has a possibility to move into medium. Brady Norton, the Cal Poly transfer, has an opportunity as well. But to me, he feels a year away. Ben Roebuck was another one who's had some good things said about him. You've got the two freshmen, Avery Gash and Caden Strayhorn, who I don't expect to be factors, even though they believe both are early enrollees. And then Connor Jones, he's just kind of gotten lost at this point. I don't know what he's doing. I haven't heard anything about him one way or the other. All right, wide receiver. We'll finish out at wide receiver in this segment. Hopefully this is entertaining enough. It's, going down a list, but kind of just at least trying to give you at least my perspective on where these players are at the moment. Just making sure we're not missing anything here. No, we're not. Okay. Wide receiver. I have none in the low category. I have multiple in high. I have 5 in high, 2 medium highs, 5 mediums, and 1 medium low. And we'll explain all of those now. The highs are guys who are 100% going to be playing a lot. I would consider them all essentially starters. Maybe, it depends on just kind of what the play call is, to open up a game. Donovan McCulley, the Indiana transfer, Samaj Morgan, assuming he's healthy, Andrew Marsh, the true freshman, Kendrick Bell, and Frederick Moore, I think are all going to be big factors in the pass game. This also precludes the idea of them getting a transfer. Let's say they do. I don't know that this is going to happen. This is speculation. Let's say Skylar Moore ends up coming in after spring ball. That maybe changes things a little bit. Say they do end up getting a True Edwards. That changes things a little bit. But barring another name coming in, I think these are your 5 guys you're going to see more than anybody. For the medium highs, I have Peyton O'Leary, who I feel is going to be used, but certainly could be ending up going the way of obsolete, and Shannon Goodwin, who we got to see a little bit in the bowl game, but really has had no production. Like, we're starting to see him on the field more, but he's not getting any catches. So Shannon Goodwin, I have as medium high. 5 guys I have as medium. The new transfer, Anthony Simpson, who is, along with Donovan McCulley, the most productive receiver on the list. CJ Charleston's on that list as well. He's got a level of production as well. Imarian Stewart, we've barely seen. I'm putting him in medium because usually you see that jump going from freshman to sophomore years for wide receivers. Amarian Walker, the Battle of Amarians, I think we would have seen a lot more of him if he didn't get injured, because he was in street clothes pretty much after that Washington game. So him staying healthy is a big thing. We'll see what they end up doing in the offseason. Obviously, they brought him back with the idea that he could be a guy, and going into year 4, they really need him to be. Jamar Browder, I have him on the list because he's a big body who is an early enrollee, and I think that can certainly help Michigan in terms of being able to get him onto the field, because they're just going to need all hands on deck at wide receiver. And then the only one I have at medium low is Jacob Washington, because I don't believe he's an early enrollee. Maybe he is and just wasn't at the bowl game, because there was a couple guys like that. Caden Strayhorn, who was I think he was at the Under Armour All-American game. But there's a couple guys that had shown up that weren't at the bowl game. Jacob Washington being one of them. So I think he's just a little bit behind the 8 ball. But certainly could end up seeing the field as well. They need all the help they can get. That's why there's no lows. That's why we're all high to medium low. I think everyone's going to have an opportunity. All right, let's move on. We're going to go to running back and tight end, and then we'll switch over to defense. We'll start with the defensive line and then move forward. We will do that here in just a moment. But before we do, this is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes is dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation, an expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. All right, let's continue on going through the roster. Who's going to play, who's maybe going to play, who's probably not going to play. That's kind of how we're looking at this. That's kind of what I'm saying here. Who's definitely going to play in terms of basically starters minutes, who's going to be reserved, who might end up working their way in, and who's certainly not going to. That's kind of different here when we get to tight ends, because I think you're going to see a lot of, you'll see some of these guys that are in low, but nonetheless. Let's go to the running backs. I've got 2 in the high, and those are the 2 starters, I think. I would consider them co-starters. I think that's fair for Michigan. Justice Haynes, the Alabama transfer, and Jordan Marshall, who you saw against Alabama. I don't think there's any shot that you don't see those 2 guys barring injury. I have 1 medium high, which is Ben Hall, who obviously was the other guy that went against Alabama. I think he'll be your third back, but certainly we could see the 2 mediums. Micah Kapana, the redshirt freshman. They talked a lot about him late in the year. He certainly could be a speedster. And here's the thing with running back. I feel like often you see a guy just kind of make a meteoric rise in the offseason. He could be that guy. But I'm also excited about the other medium. True freshman Jasper Parker. He's a late arrival, I believe. But I think he's got everything you kind of want. I think he's going to come along quickly. And I think that there's a possibility, it would be one of those things like he gets his red shirt still, but you see him in 4 games, you see him come out. Maybe it ends up kind of being like CJ Stokes before his injury in his freshman year, when you're kind of like, oh, okay, this guy could maybe do it, right? Like, this guy's kind of exciting. I think that could be that type of thing. My medium low is Donovan Johnson, just because I'm not really sure, like where he's at. I know he came back from injury. But still didn't quite see them same, didn't climb back up the rankings. At one time, almost a 5-star, was in that range, gets it in, tears his ACL, and comes back, but doesn't necessarily have the same acclaim. Then he's a 3-star, he's kind of forgotten about. I think he's got some opportunity ahead of him, but I think it's going to be a longer road just because it's just a little bit more, curious. Tight end and fullback. I've got 2 or 3 in the high, and those are 3 guys who are starting. Hogan Hansen, Marlon Klein, Max Bredesen. I think that's obvious. You're going to see those 3 guys. Hogan Hansen's going to be the closest you have to Colston Loveland. Don't think he's going to be Colston Loveland, right? Colston Loveland is 1 of 1. Unfortunately, you wish that he would have been able to stay healthy this year so that he could have really shown out. I do think he's better than Davis Warren, personally. I think Davis Warren's really good. I think Colston Loveland's got another gear. And the problem is he was injured most of the year, so he didn't quite get to see it. And obviously the quarterback situation being what it is. But I think that he did an amazing job when he was just constantly double, triple covered. Okay, we're diverting ourselves. We're tangenting. Marlon Klein, I expect to have a much better year this year now that he's gotten a full season under his belt. Hogan Hansen, he kind of just got a little bit of a taste, kind of like Colston did in year 1. And I think that he's going to come on strong in year 2. Mediums, I've got Zach Marshall, who got a bit of play with Colston's injury, more as a blocking tight end, and he was injured too. He had a club on his hand, but still played quite a bit. And I'm going to just go ahead and go Brady Prescorn, because even though he had injury issues too this year, I think he's going to be really good, and I think he's going to climb up the depth chart. I got 3 lows, but 2 of them I think you're going to see, because 2 of them are fullbacks. So the fullbacks, Jalen Hoffman. And I think there's a chance you see Eli Owens because I just think it was an early enrollee, and he's a guy that I know that they're enamored with. I think you could see him. The low that I'm most curious about is Deacon Tonielli. Where's this guy been? Just been kind of waiting to see, like, okay, Deacon Tonielli, are you coming on? Are you going to do something? We haven't seen him at all. 4-star recruit. That's typical for Michigan at tight end, it seems. Sometimes the lost and forgotten 4-stars. But that's where that's at. I didn't miss anyone because no Andrew Olesh, unfortunately. I'm just was thinking aloud. Who did I miss? What did I miss? I think we're gonna do both defensive line and edge, and then we'll finish out with the 3 secondary spots, and then final thoughts. So let's move over to defense. Let's do the defensive tackles. Basically, this is a pretty big group. Okay, so I've got 2 guys who I have as high. 2 guys at medium high, 3 at medium, 2 at medium low, and 5 on low. And only 1 on the low is kind of like or 2 on the low are freshmen, so it's kind of like, okay, that makes sense. But I got the 2 eyes are Rayshon Benny and Trey Williams. Trey Williams being the Clemson transfer. I think those are most likely your 2 starters. Certainly Trey Pierce, who's a medium high, could be a starter, and Trey Williams, and the just spoiler alert, Damon Payne is the other medium high. I mean, that's I think your primary rotation, though I think you're going to see a lot of Ikawana and, Etta, who are mediums. And I've got Benny Patterson as another medium, the true freshman. I think he can be a guy that cracks the lineup early, even as a latecomer. I just think he's like all kinds of talented, and I think he's kind of underrated. So that kind of takes care of medium high and medium. But I think you're going to see all 6 of those guys, the top guys, and then maybe the 7th and Benny Patterson in rotation. Not as dominant as the Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant of it all, but a much deeper bench than they've, I think, maybe had, potentially, assuming everybody stays healthy. I think it's a really solid okay, they can really go deep into the bench here. Again, assuming everybody that I mentioned is staying, Rayshon Bennett, you expect to stay. Ikawana, you expect to stay. But no official, hey, I'm coming back type announcements. I think Benny kind of said it, but didn't really say it. You know what I mean? The medium lows, Manuel Beagle. I heard some things about him in fall practice, or not fall practice, but bull prep rather. And I think that he's a guy that absolutely could find his way on the field next year. He could be one of those guys, kind of like Ikawana was this past year, where you're like, oh, okay. And David Pale, who I just think needed some time on task. Big body, I feel like he's going to be like a Trey Pierce type in terms of you didn't really hear about him, although there were high expectations. I mean, they loved him, even though he's a 3-star. Obviously, to be able to wrest him away from USC, I think was big for them. And he didn't play this year. You don't normally expect that of freshman defensive tackles anyway. But I think that year too, you're going to see some moments. It might be more so as a game is out of hand, but I think you're at least going to start seeing him get in the rotation. So I've got 5 lows in the defensive tackle position. And actually, I think we're looking at the time here. We're not going to be able to get to edge because I'm just taking so long. The 5 lows I have are 2 freshmen, Travis Moten, Brooks Barr. I think Moten's going to be incredible, but you didn't see Kenneth Grant in year 1. I think that's the comp kind of. I think that he can be that type of player, as low rated as he was, and Bobby Kanka. Brooks Barr entering year 2, or no, this is year 3 for Brooks Barr. I haven't really seen or heard of him. Ted Hammond coming off of year 1. Haven't really seen or heard of him. Alessandro Lorenzetti moved from offensive line to defensive. Haven't really seen or heard of him. So they're all low until further notice. All right, we're going to get through edge real quick. I've got 4 highs, 4 guys you're absolutely going to see. I went ahead and put Jayshawn Barham in at edge, even though I still am not. I know that's the plan. I still have a gut feeling he's going to end up back at linebacker. But here's your rotation. Derek Moore, TJ Guy, Jayshawn Barham, Cameron Brandt. I mean, we've already seen it. We saw it in the bowl game. Not with Jayshawn Barham, but we saw those guys. I think those guys are absolutely going to be playing a lot. You're going to see all 4 of them early and often. Dom Nichols, I have at medium high. He's the only medium high. I think you're going to see him quite a bit. And then you've got 3 mediums who I just don't know about at this point. 2 of them are going to be redshirt freshmen, Devin Baxter, who I know they were high on as a recruit, and Lugard Payu just needs to add some meat to his frame. I think has got an absolute possibility. And then Nate Marshall, who just absolutely showed out at the Navy All-American game. I think he's absolutely got that opportunity to get some reps as a true freshman. I think you'll see him come in. I've got 4 lows. One's a true freshman, Julius Holly. Tyler McLaurin, assuming he comes back, it just doesn't seem like we've seen him on special teams, but you don't really see him in games. Imeric Kumba, who I haven't really heard much about since he's gotten there, outside of maybe fall camp his freshman year. And then Keyshawn Bennett, who's been a special team stalwart, but we haven't really seen him play much. We've seen him play a little bit in blowout situations, but haven't really seen him really crack that too deep and as a former 4-star. So you'd like to see him get there at some point. All right, let's continue on with linebacker, safety, and cornerback, and we will do that here in just a moment. But before we do, attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for the Lions-Commanders game. Yeah, it's expensive, but you're going to get your best deal there. Browsing through the deals was a breeze, and I found great value, as much as you can, for a game of that magnitude for all kinds of seats around the venue. The Super Deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. So I love that I can see the seat views before buying. You can literally, that's all you see. You see exactly your seat view when you're scrolling through. And the app shows you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, or create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we have found ourselves with 3 positions left in a race against time. None of the position groups are quite as loaded as far as the amount of players, so should be able to get through this a little bit easier. Linebacker, 1 is high. With Jayshon Barham over at edge, the only one I have listed as high is Ernest Hausman. Beyond that, I'm not really sure, right? So I've got a medium high in Jimmy Rolder because it's like we've seen him in rotation a lot. There were some injuries that kind of kept him off the field. But then behind him, any of these next 4 could be guys who play starters minutes. And one is a true freshman. Jaden Hood, who is quiet. We see him actually more than you'd think, but you don't really hear his name called. Troy Bowles, the transfer from Georgia, who probably came over to try to be a starter, right, after being back on the depth, behind the depth chart in the loaded Georgia team. Cole Sullivan, who I think entering year 2 is going to absolutely, he just looks like an absolute thumper. Like, I'm really impressed with him. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, true freshman, I think is absolutely going to play, assuming he's healthy. He wasn't healthy for bowl prep. But assuming he's healthy, I think even as a true freshman, you're going to see him. Got 1 freshman on the low, and that's Chase Taylor. He's a development guy, but they love him. Then I've got 2 other names. Zach Ludwig, who I think as a recruit, no one really thought, okay, we're absolutely going to see Zach Ludwig. But at the same time, people said the same thing at Kwity Paye and Ronnie Bell and a bunch of others of that nature. And Jason Hewlett, who has the body type, but haven't really heard anything about Jason Hewlett, the Ohio-based linebacker. So he's got some work to do as he enters year 3. Safety, I'm projecting Rod Moore to return. I've got 3 on the high. Rod Moore, Brandon Hillman, Mason Curtis. I think that's your rotation primarily. And then everyone else I have at medium, and I think that there's just questions as to who's going to be. Yeah, I have all 3 incoming freshmen on the medium list. Kanoa Winston, Elijah Dotson, Jordan Young. I think they absolutely could be in the rotation. Redshirt freshman Jacob Oden, we didn't really hear anything about, but as he enters year 2, certainly could be a guy who works his way in. And then you've got transfer TJ Metcalf, former starter at Arkansas. He's maybe more of a medium high, as is Jaden Mangum, who, as we know now, had more off-field reasons academically as to why he didn't play this year. But former starter, I believe for 2 years at MSU. I again, for the second straight year, I look at this safety list and I'm like, it wouldn't surprise me to see any of those guys be starters at any point in time. Now, was it incredible this last year? No. It was okay, but it's kind of the same thing. It's a loaded position group. Lamar Morgan has to love it. I forgot one name on cornerback, so I'll add that here. But cornerback, we've got 2 highs. The 2 guys I expect to be starting, Jair Hill and Zeke Berry, at the different quarterbacks. And then I've got 2 medium highs in Josiah Edmond entering year 2. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think he had some off-field issues, which kind of kept him from seeing the field a lot late, right? Because they started working him in mid-season, and then you just didn't see him or Jair Hill. But Josiah Edmond, I know, has the talent and the ability. And then I think true freshman Shamari Earls is going to make his way onto the field quite a bit. So I have him as a medium high. Then you've got the transfer Caleb Anderson, who just comes from Louisiana, 3 years playing under Lamar Morgan. I think that's a big reason why they were able to get him. Don't know where things are with Thaddeus Dixon, the Washington transfer, who reportedly maybe was on campus yesterday. No one seems to be able to confirm that. But I think they brought him in with the idea that he can be a depth piece. I don't think he's going to be a starter. And then I've got two other mediums. I got a freshman and Jaden Sanders. And the other medium is just a guy who can't seem to stay on the field. And I'm like, is he going to be on the team next year? I don't know. And that's Jaden McBurrows. You forget about Jaden McBurrows, right? He's played some good football, but absolutely could be a part of this. He could be a factor. Jaden McBurrows absolutely could be on this list. Like I said, Jaden Sanders, true freshman who arrives late. I think he could work his way in the rotation. He and Shamari Earls, like I think Earls will play more. Again, I'm not saying it like week 1. I'm talking like week 6, week 7. I think he'll kind of look like Will Johnson his freshman year. It's like, yeah, if you need to rely on him mid-year, then you'll be good. But you don't know if you're going to be able to rely on him that early, right? So I think Shamari Earls, that's kind of one of the reasons why he picked Michigan over Georgia. But I think Jaden Sanders could work his way in. I've got 3 on the low list, and that will close us out. And one of them is low. That's Jeremiah Lowe, the Kentucky-based cornerback who we haven't really seen. Ricky Johnson, the transfer from UNLV, who did not look very good when he was out there, and then seemed to be injured for the whole year, was in street clothes. And then Tevis Metcalf, I have no idea what we're getting from the Arkansas transfer. He was an unranked recruit. I guess I'm curious to see like where they see him being. He's coming off, I believe, his freshman year. So I have no idea what to expect from him, but that's kind of what I think as far as the cornerback depth. So that's pretty much the whole team, barring some, Zahir Mathis or Ty Haywood coming, any incoming transfers, guys deciding late they're going to the NFL draft. Certainly there's going to be some departures, I would imagine, coming out of spring ball, but there will also likely be some additions. But as it stands right now, that's your entire team. So I think it looks pretty good, especially defensively. A lot of guys that you're like, well, they're going to have to play him because he's too good. It's a great place to be. All right, that's going to do it for us today. By the way, apologies, we didn't have a Friday show. Forgot to mention that at one of the breaks. Uncle's funeral. My uncle passed away in mid-December unexpectedly. His funeral was on Saturday. Kind of didn't realize, all this out-of-town family was in town. So ended up having to pull an audible and missed the show to spend some time with family. But we are back now, so we'll be fully engaged from here on in. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.